Ladies and gentlemen, it is an irrefutable truth that when wronged, we are often overcome by an overwhelming desire for vengeance. A part of us, perhaps out of pride or wounded dignity, wishes to right the balance in a way that satisfies our own sense of justice. Yet, in our pursuit of revenge, we may not realize how easily we are led astray from what is truly right. We forget that while we may act in the heat of anger, there is a higher principle of justice that operates beyond the immediate and the personal, the justice of God. Let us examine the nature of revenge. It is, in essence, the attempt to restore equilibrium in a situation where we have been wronged. However, unlike a cosmic scale that knows no bias, our desire for vengeance is often clouded by our emotions, our wounds, and our limited understanding. We see the wrongs committed against us, but fail to understand the broader picture. Revenge is motivated by the need for personal satisfaction, and therein lies its flaw. The avenger becomes both the judge and the executioner, relying solely on their own narrow perception of fairness. But human judgment, though well-intentioned, is fraught with error, inconsistency, and passion. In contrast, God's justice is impartial, timeless, and all-knowing. Let us consider the moral implications of revenge. At first glance, it may seem justifiable. The wrongdoer must pay for their actions, we might say. Yet, in the act of seeking retribution, we are often blinded to the harm we do to ourselves. Revenge does not purify the soul, it corrupts it. The desire to hurt another is rooted in anger, and that anger consumes us, distorting our perspective and making us prisoners of our own bitterness. It is as though we are chained to the very wrongs we wish to avenge. The one who seeks revenge might believe they are punishing the wrongdoer, but in truth, they only deepen their own suffering. The cycle of resentment continues to spin, leaving both parties in the dust of moral ruin. Let us reflect on the greater wisdom of God's justice. Unlike our own attempts at vengeance, God's justice is not bound by time or limited understanding. His view is eternal, seeing not just the immediate harm, but the entire story, the circumstances, the hearts, and the consequences that span far beyond our finite perspective. Trusting in God's judgment means acknowledging that we do not possess the ability to see all things as they truly are. We must come to terms with the fact that some things are simply beyond our control and comprehension. In choosing God's justice over our own vengeful desires, we are given the opportunity to relinquish our burdens. We place our faith in a wisdom that surpasses our own, trusting that God, in His infinite understanding, will bring about a resolution that serves the greater good. Revenge may satisfy for a moment, but divine justice heals, restores, and restores harmony. The Apostle Paul writes, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." This call to relinquish our need for revenge is not a command of passivity, but an invitation to trust in the righteousness of God. It is an invitation to experience true peace, not the fleeting, hollow satisfaction that revenge promises, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from knowing that ultimate justice is not ours to impose, but God's to deliver. The nature of revenge, while seemingly a natural response to being wronged, is fundamentally flawed when viewed in the context of justice. Revenge, by its very definition, is the act of seeking retribution for a perceived wrong or injury. The emotional energy that fuels the desire for revenge often stems from the belief that an offense must be repaid in kind. This belief is ingrained in many societies and cultures, which often see revenge as a legitimate way of restoring balance when one has been wronged. The impulse for revenge is deeply rooted in the human condition, where the wronged party desires to see the wrongdoer suffer in a manner that mirrors the hurt they experienced. When examined closely, revenge presents significant moral and practical issues. The first issue lies in the nature of the wrong itself. Often, the perception of an offense is shaped by our emotional state and personal biases. What we might view as a grave injustice may be in reality a misunderstanding or a situation where we do not have the full picture. In the heat of the moment, we tend to exaggerate the offense, elevating it to a level that demands retribution. This impulse is not grounded in a rational or objective evaluation of the situation, but rather in our emotional reaction to the perceived wrong. Thus, revenge is often built on a foundation of distorted perception, making it a precarious basis for true justice. And so, revenge is inherently personal. It is a form of justice enacted by the individual, where the wronged party takes it upon themselves to punish the wrongdoer. The concept of personal vengeance removes any objective or universal standard of justice, placing the judgment in the hands of someone who may not be able to see all aspects of the situation clearly. Meanwhile, the wronged doer is prevented from thinking that they have any responsibility towards remedying the wrongdoer. A person wronged may feel justified in their desire for revenge, but their actions are rooted in self-interest and the desire for personal satisfaction. This desire for personal gain often clouds the individual's ability to fairly and justly address the situation. There is little consideration of the broader context or the potential consequences of revenge on the long-term well-being of either party. Another critical flaw in revenge is the manner in which it perpetuates conflict rather than resolving it. When one seeks revenge, they typically do so with the belief that it will bring closure and restore balance. However, revenge does not end the cycle of harm, it only escalates it. The act of revenge invites further retaliation, leading to a spiral of vengeance that continues indefinitely. Rather than resolving the conflict, it perpetuates it, creating more animosity and hostility between the parties involved. What begins as a single wrong often grows into a larger, more destructive cycle that can harm not just the individuals involved, but entire communities or even societies. The desire for revenge often consumes the avenger. The more a person fixates on the wrong done to them, the more they are drawn into a mental and emotional state that robs them of peace. Revenge requires mental and emotional investment. It is not simply an act, but a continual process of ruminating on the offense and formulating ways to retaliate. This obsession with the wrong done to them consumes the person, making them less capable of living in the present or focusing on the future. The desire for revenge can distort one's perspective, leading them to view every situation through the lens of past wrongs and grievances. As a result, the individual is imprisoned by their own bitterness and anger, which further erodes their ability to find peace or closure. Revenge is often ultimately unsatisfying. While it may bring temporary satisfaction or a sense of justice, it does not offer lasting fulfillment. The feeling of victory or vindication that comes with revenge is fleeting and does not lead to lasting peace or healing. After the act of revenge has been carried out, the emotional wounds that triggered the desire for vengeance remain, and new wounds are often created in the process. From time to time, the avenger may find that their feelings of satisfaction quickly fade, leaving them with a sense of emptiness or even regret. The pursuit of revenge often results in a hollow victory, one that does not bring the peace or restoration that was initially sought. Revenge, while often viewed as a natural response to personal wrongs, carries with it profound moral implications. At its core, revenge is driven by a desire to punish the wrongdoer for the harm they have caused. This impulse, while it may seem justifiable at first glance, has the potential to corrupt both the avenger and the target. The process of seeking revenge, rather than providing satisfaction or closure, often leads to a deeper moral degradation and internal conflict that extends far beyond the original offense. Revenge distorts the sense of justice. When a person seeks to avenge themselves, they are making a personal judgment, one that is often subjective and clouded by emotions such as anger, hurt, and pride. This personalized approach to justice lacks objectivity. The avenger may feel justified in their actions, but their judgment is colored by their own pain, which may lead to an excessive or disproportionate response. In this way, revenge often escalates the original wrongdoing, creating a new wrong that is not measured by an universal standard, but by the individual's emotional reaction to the offense. As a result, what could have been a simple grievance may spiral into a series of injustices, with the original harm magnified by the revenge itself. The act of seeking revenge often causes more harm to the avenger than to the wrongdoer. When a person becomes consumed by a desire for vengeance, they allow the offense to occupy their thoughts and emotions to an unhealthy degree. This fixation on the wrong not only blinds them to other aspects of their life, but also creates an internal state of turmoil. Rather than healing from the initial injury, the avenger becomes further entrenched in their anger and bitterness. This bitterness eats away at their peace of mind, preventing them from moving forward. The desire to see the wrongdoer suffer becomes an obsession, and the avenger becomes trapped in a cycle of resentment and emotional pain. The more they focus on revenge, the less they are able to find contentment or inner peace. In essence, the very act of seeking vengeance takes the avenger further away from healing and restoration, as they cling to their anger and hurt, rather than allowing themselves to move past it. Revenge also has a dehumanizing effect on both the one seeking vengeance and the target. In the act of revenge, the person wronged often views the wrongdoer as less than human, as a mere object to be punished for their actions. This perspective allows the avenger to justify their actions, as they see the target as deserving of retribution. However, this reduction of the other person to a mere object or a symbol of their wrongdoing strips them of their inherent dignity and humanity. It becomes easier to rationalize the harm done to the other person when they are viewed as the enemy rather than as a person who may have their own struggles and motivations. By dehumanizing the other, the avenger loses sight of the complex and often multifaceted nature of human beings. The act of revenge, therefore, reinforces a perspective that divides people into good and evil without acknowledging the complexity of human experience. The pursuit of revenge also creates a chain of negative consequences that can ripple through a person's life and relationships. Revenge may create an atmosphere of hostility and division where each side seeks to get back at the other, and the cycle of harm continues. The desire to repay wrongs in kind fosters an environment where communication breaks down and mutual understanding is replaced by suspicion and bitterness. Relationships that could have been healed through dialogue and empathy are instead destroyed by retaliation. Friends become enemies, families are torn apart, and communities fracture. The moral cost of revenge extends beyond the immediate interaction between the avenger and the wrongdoer. it affects everyone within their sphere of influence. As the desire for vengeance spreads, it undermines the fabric of trust and cooperation that holds societies together. The lifespan of the sufferer who lost what little they had when they were young stifled as they grew off. The emotional toll that revenge takes on the avenger is also significant. When a person seeks revenge, they often harbor negative emotions such as anger, resentment, and hatred. These emotions not only cloud their judgment, but also take a toll on their physical and mental health. Chronic stress, anxiety, and depression can arise from the continual state of anger and hostility that revenge engenders. In seeking to harm another, the avenger may inadvertently harm themselves in ways that are far-reaching and long-lasting. The internal conflict that arises from revenge can manifest in a variety of ways, from disrupted sleep patterns to chronic illness. The energy spent on harboring negative emotions and plotting retribution consumes the individual's mental and emotional resources, leaving them drained and exhausted. The pursuit of revenge undermines the possibility of true reconciliation and healing. Revenge is rooted in division. It seeks to create a sense of justice by perpetuating the divide between the avenger and the wrongdoer. However, real healing comes from forgiveness and the willingness to move beyond the cycle of injury and retaliation. Revenge does not offer the possibility of reconciliation because it keeps the wounds fresh and the enmity alive. In contrast, forgiveness and understanding allow for the possibility of renewal. By holding on to revenge, the avenger denies themselves the opportunity to experience the peace that comes from letting go of anger and resentment. True healing requires the restoration of relationships, the willingness to forgive, and the desire to build bridges rather than walls. Thus, the moral implications of revenge are far-reaching. It distorts justice, consumes the avenger, dehumanizes the other, and fractures relationships. The pursuit of vengeance may seem like a way to right a wrong, but in reality it leads to a path of greater harm and inner turmoil. True peace and justice can only be achieved by relinquishing the desire for revenge and embracing the higher path of forgiveness and understanding. God's justice, when compared to human attempts at revenge, offers a greater wisdom that transcends our limited understanding and experience. Human justice is often clouded by our emotions, biases, and limited perspective, making it imperfect and prone to error. In contrast, God's justice is rooted in His infinite wisdom, fairness, and knowledge. It is impartial, all-encompassing, and operates with a depth of understanding that human judgment cannot replicate. Trusting in God's justice means recognizing that He sees the entirety of a situation, the motives, the hearts of individuals, and the broader consequences, far beyond what any individual can grasp. This understanding provides us with a peace that is not contingent on the temporary satisfaction of vengeance, but on the assurance that ultimate justice will prevail according to God's will. The first aspect of God's justice that surpasses human understanding is His ability to see all things as they truly are. Humans often act with incomplete knowledge. We judge based on what we can see, hear, and understand in the moment, but we lack the ability to fully perceive the hearts of others, the hidden motivations behind actions, or the long-term consequences of decisions. We may interpret an offense as a deliberate attack or injustice, but our judgment may be based on a misunderstanding or a lack of information. Human revenge, therefore, is inherently flawed because it is built on a partial and often inaccurate assessment of the situation. God, on the other hand, knows the entirety of the story. He understands the hearts of all involved, the wrongdoer and the wronged, and His justice is based on a complete and perfect understanding of the circumstances. This means that his judgments are not swayed by emotion or limited perspective, but are rooted in a perfect understanding of truth. God's justice also operates with an eternal perspective. While humans are often concerned with immediate results, righting a wrong as quickly as possible, God's sense of justice is not confined to the short term. His judgment encompasses the entirety of a person's life, their choices, and the ultimate consequences of their actions. What we see as injustice in the present may not be the final word on the matter. God's justice works in His own timing, often unfolding over a longer period than we might wish. His ways are not our ways, and His understanding of justice operates within the context of His eternal plan for humanity. This eternal perspective allows God to bring about justice in a way that leads to the greater good, even when immediate results are not immediately apparent. If only you understood this perspective, you would see and bless God's bountiful way. Human vengeance, in contrast, is often hasty and driven by the desire for immediate satisfaction, which can lead to unjust outcomes. To His comprehensive understanding and eternal perspective, God's justice is fundamentally impartial. Human justice can be tainted by prejudice, favoritism, or emotional bias. We may be more inclined to forgive those we love or punish those we dislike. We may be swayed by societal status, wealth, or influence, allowing these factors to influence our judgment. God's justice, however, is perfectly fair. He shows no partiality based on external factors, such as race, social standing, or personal relationships. His judgment is always rooted in righteousness and is applied equally to all. This impartiality ensures that justice is served in its purest form, where every individual is judged according to their actions and the truth, not based on their circumstances or any external influence. Human revenge, by contrast, often operates on the basis of subjective feelings and partiality, leading to distorted and uneven outcomes. God's justice is restorative, not merely punitive. While human revenge seeks to inflict harm or suffering in retaliation, God's justice aims to restore balance and bring about ultimate reconciliation. The purpose of God's justice is not to destroy or condemn, but to bring people to repentance and redemption. God desires that all people be reconciled to Him, and His justice is always tempered with mercy. He does not act out of a desire for retribution, but seeks to correct, heal, and restore. The ultimate goal of God's justice is the restoration of peace and harmony within creation, rather than the perpetuation of conflict. Human revenge, in contrast, often leaves scars and perpetuates division, as it is more concerned with inflicting suffering than with restoring peace. God's justice operates in perfect alignment with His love and mercy. This is one of the most profound aspects of divine justice that human justice cannot replicate. While humans may seek justice out of anger or resentment, God's justice is always balanced by His infinite love and mercy. Even in His judgment, God desires to bring about healing and transformation. He does not delight in punishment, but rather in the opportunity for repentance and reconciliation. This is demonstrated in the ultimate act of justice and mercy, Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross. Through His death, Jesus took on the punishment that humanity deserved, offering forgiveness and reconciliation to all who would accept it. This perfect combination of justice and mercy is something that human revenge can never achieve. Revenge seeks only to punish, while God's justice also seeks to redeem and restore. Trusting in God's justice provides us with the assurance that no wrong goes unnoticed and that all will be made right in the end. While we may be tempted to take matters into our own hands and seek revenge, we are called to place our faith in God's perfect judgment. His justice is far superior to any human attempt to right a wrong, and His plans for the restoration of all things far exceed anything we could imagine. The peace that comes from trusting in God's justice is a peace that transcends our understanding. It allows us to release our anger and bitterness, knowing that God will bring about the ultimate resolution. In His perfect timing and according to His perfect will. In this we find comfort and rest, knowing that we do not have to bear the burden of seeking vengeance, but can instead trust in the wisdom and fairness of God's justice.